Imagine a time when the people of France decided to change everything they knew about power and freedom. Welcome to the gripping story of the French Revolution. Hello and welcome to History and Culture. If you're captivated by the dramatic stories of the past and how they shaped our present, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell to stay updated with our latest content. Stick around to the end because we'll reveal a surprising fact about the French Revolution that you won't want to miss. Setting the scene, the French Revolution began in 1789, a time when France was one of the most powerful countries in Europe but also faced many problems. People were struggling, and the gap between the rich and the poor was growing wider. The three estates, French society was divided into three groups called estates. The first estate was the clergy, the second estate was the nobility, and the third estate was everyone else, from peasants to wealthy merchants. This system created tension because the first and second estates had privileges that the third estate did not. Economic hardship. France was in debt due to expensive wars and lavish spending by the monarchy. The common people, or third estate, bore the burden of high taxes, while the nobles and clergy were largely exempt, causing widespread resentment. Bad harvests and famine. In the years leading up to the revolution, poor harvests led to food shortages and high bread prices, causing hunger and unrest among the population. Bread was a staple food, and its scarcity made life very difficult for ordinary people. King Louis XVI was the ruler of France, but he struggled to deal with the country's financial problems. Many people felt that he was disconnected from the struggles of everyday life, leading to widespread discontent. The Estates General. In 1789, King Louis XVI called a meeting of the Estates General to address the financial crisis. It was the first time in over a century that this assembly had been convened, and it brought representatives from all three estates together. The Tennis Court Oath. The Third Estate, frustrated by their lack of power in the Estates General, declared themselves the National Assembly. They took an oath on a tennis court, vowing not to disband until they had written a new constitution for France. Left and right. The political terms left and right originated during the French Revolution of 1789. In the National Assembly, members were divided on how much influence they believed the monarchy should retain. Those who sat on the left side of the assembly were generally opposed to the monarchy and wanted more radical changes towards equality and democratic reforms. They supported the idea of reducing the king's power and granting more rights to the people, aligning with revolutionary ideals. Meanwhile, those who sat on the right were more supportive of the monarchy and traditional institutions, favoring the preservation of the status quo and existing hierarchies. Over time, these seating arrangements evolved into broader political ideologies. The left came to represent progressive, liberal, or socialist policies aimed at social equality and change, while the right represented conservative or traditional policies that emphasized stability, hierarchy, and the preservation of established institutions. This left-right dichotomy has persisted throughout history and continues to influence political discourse globally. These terms are now used to describe a wide range of political beliefs, parties, and movements across the world, though their specific meanings can vary depending on cultural and historical contexts. Storming of the Bastille. On July 14, 1789, Parisians stormed the Bastille, a prison that symbolized royal tyranny. This event marked the beginning of the revolution and is celebrated today as Bastille Day, a symbol of freedom and resistance. Declaration of the Rights of Man. The National Assembly adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, which proclaimed liberty, equality, and fraternity as fundamental rights. This document became a cornerstone of revolutionary ideals. The March on Versailles. In October 1789, thousands of women marched from Paris to the royal palace at Versailles to protest bread prices and demand action from the king. They brought the royal family back to Paris, signaling the end of the king's absolute power. Reforms and changes. The revolution brought many changes, including the abolition of feudal privileges and the establishment of new legal and social structures. The National Assembly worked to create a society based on equality and merit. The flight to Varennes. In 1791, King Louis XVI and his family attempted to flee France, hoping to gather support from foreign allies. They were caught and brought back to Paris, leading to increased distrust and calls for a republic. War with neighboring countries. Fearing the spread of revolutionary ideas, Austria and Prussia declared war on France. The revolutionaries responded by forming a large citizen army, defending their newfound rights and freedoms. The rise of the Jacobins, radical political groups, like the Jacobins, gained influence and pushed for more extreme measures. Leaders like Maximilien Robespierre called for the establishment of a republic and the execution of the king. The execution of King Louis XVI. In 1793, King Louis XVI was tried and executed for treason. This marked the end of the monarchy and the beginning of the radical phase of the revolution. The Reign of Terror. The revolution turned increasingly violent during the Reign of Terror, led by Robespierre. Thousands were executed for being perceived enemies of the revolution, creating an atmosphere of fear. The guillotine. During the French Revolution in 1789, France was going through a period of enormous change and widespread violence. One of the most famous decisions made during this time was the adoption of the guillotine as a method of execution. The guillotine was proposed by Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotin, a member of the National Assembly, the revolutionary governing body. Although the guillotine bears his name, Guillotin was not the inventor, but he was the one who suggested its use. His motivation was not sadistic or cruel, on the contrary, Guillotin was concerned with humanity and equality. Before the revolution, methods of execution in France were brutal and unequal. Wealthy or upper-class individuals, such as nobles, were often beheaded with a sword, a method considered quick and honorable. However, people from lower classes, like peasants, might be hanged, burned, or even quartered, all of which were painful and slow methods. Guillotin, influenced by the ideas of equality and human rights that were flourishing during the revolution, proposed that all people, regardless of social class, should be executed in the same manner. The guillotine was seen as a machine that ensured a quick death and, therefore, a more humane one. Additionally, using the guillotine aimed to eliminate inequality in punishments and avoid unnecessary suffering. This method was accepted and became the primary means of execution in France, especially during the period known as the Reign of Terror, when thousands of people were executed. Thus, the guillotine not only symbolized the justice and equality sought by the French Revolution but also became a reminder of the dark side of those ideals, as it was used extensively and, in many cases, unjustly. Cultural changes. During the French Revolution, one of the most significant moments in France's history, the revolutionaries decided to make radical changes in many aspects of daily life, and one of those changes was the calendar. The idea to change the calendar emerged in 1793, at the height of the revolution, and was mainly promoted by the Jacobins, a revolutionary group that wanted to break away from everything that represented the old monarchical and religious regime. The revolutionaries believed that the old Gregorian calendar, the one we still use today, was too closely tied to the Catholic Church and the monarchy. They wanted a calendar that reflected the new republican values of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and that was more in tune with nature and reason. So they created the French Republican calendar. This calendar had 12 months, but the names of the months were entirely different from the ones we know. Instead of January, February, March, etc., the months had names that reflected the natural characteristics and climate of each period of the year. Here are the names and their meanings. 1. Vendémiaire, from September 22nd to October 21st, comes from vendange, meaning harvest, because it was the time for harvesting grapes. 2. Brumaire, from October 22nd to November 20th, derived from brume, meaning mist, as there were frequent fogs during this month. 3. Frimaire, from November 21st to December 20th, refers to frimus, meaning frost, due to the onset of cold weather. 4. Nivose, from December 21st to January 19th, from the Latin nevosus, meaning snowy, as it was the month of snow. 5. Pluvios, from January 20th to February 18th, derived from pluvia, meaning rain, as it was a rainy month. 6. Ventos, from February 19th to March 20th, from ventus, meaning wind, due to the prevailing winds. 7. Germinal, from March 21st to April 19th, related to German, as it was the time when plants began to germinate. 8. Floreal, from April 20th to May 19th, from the Latin flor, meaning flower, as it was the month of flowers. 9. Prairial, from May 20th to June 18th, comes from prairie, meaning meadow, because of the abundance of green pastures. 10. Messidor, from June 19th to July 18th, from messes, meaning harvest, as it was the harvest season. 11. Thermidor, from July 19th to August 17th, derived from the Greek thermos, meaning heat, due to the high summer temperatures. 12. Fructidor, from August 18th to September 16th, from fructus, meaning fruit, as it was the month of ripe fruits. Each month had exactly 30 days, and at the end of the year, there were 5 or 6 additional days called complementary days that were dedicated to celebrating revolutionary festivals. But the changes didn't stop at the calendar. The revolutionaries also attempted to reform other cultural aspects. For example, they changed the measurement system to what we now know as the metric system, to unify and rationalize measurements throughout France. They also tried to change the week from 7 days to a 10-day week, called a decade, to break with the Christian tradition of the week and eliminate Sunday as a day of religious rest. Additionally, they sought to change how people addressed each other. Instead of monsieur or madame, which reflected social distinctions, terms like citoyen, citizen, and citoyenne, female citizen, were introduced to emphasize equality among all. These changes reflect how the French Revolution was not just a political shift but also an attempt to transform the entire culture and society of France, creating a complete break from the past. However, many of these changes, including the Republican calendar, were abandoned after a few years when they proved too complicated for everyday life. The Republican calendar, for example, was only used for 12 years, until 1805, when Napoleon Bonaparte replaced it with the Gregorian calendar once again. Fall of Robespierre. In 1794, Robespierre himself was arrested and executed as public opinion turned against the excessive violence of the Reign of Terror. His death marked the end of the radical phase of the revolution. The Directory, a new government called the Directory, took power, but it was plagued by corruption and inefficiency. The Directory struggled to stabilize France and faced constant threats from both royalists and radical revolutionaries. Rise of Napoleon Bonaparte. Amidst the chaos, a young general named Napoleon Bonaparte rose to prominence through his military successes. He became a popular figure and seized power in a coup d'état in 1799. Napoleon's reforms. Napoleon implemented a series of reforms, including the Napoleonic Code, which modernized the legal system and laid the foundation for future civil law systems around the world. Napoleon as emperor. In 1804, Napoleon declared himself Emperor of the French, bringing an end to the revolution and establishing a new imperial regime. His leadership transformed France and Europe, but also led to new conflicts. Impact on Europe. The French Revolution inspired a wave of revolutionary movements across Europe, spreading ideas of democracy, equality, and nationalism that would shape the continent for years to come. Legacy of the Revolution. The Revolution left a lasting impact on France and the world, promoting the ideals of liberty and equality and challenging traditional hierarchies and systems of power. Social changes. The revolution led to significant social changes, including the rise of the middle class and the decline of the nobility. It also laid the groundwork for modern democratic governments. Economic consequences. The revolution disrupted traditional economic systems and led to changes in property ownership and land distribution. It also paved the way for industrialization in France. Cultural shifts. The revolution brought about cultural changes, including new forms of art, literature, and philosophy that reflected the revolutionary ideals of freedom and equality. Women's role. Although the revolution did not achieve full gender equality, it sparked debates about women's rights and inspired future movements for gender equality and social justice. Religion and the Church. The revolution challenged the power of the Catholic Church, leading to the secularization of society and the rise of religious tolerance. Education and Enlightenment. The revolution promoted the spread of education and Enlightenment ideas, emphasizing reason, science, and individual rights as key components of a modern society. A new era. The French Revolution marked the beginning of a new era in world history, challenging old systems of power and inspiring future generations to fight for freedom, equality, and justice. And now, for the most surprising fact about the French Revolution. During the French Revolution, Maximilien Robespierre and the revolutionaries sought to replace traditional religious beliefs with secular and rationalist ideas, leading to the establishment of the cult of the Supreme Being. However, the cult of reason was also a significant part of the revolutionary attempt to de-Christianize France. Both movements reflect the revolutionary leaders' desire to transform the cultural and religious landscape of France. The cult of reason was established by radical revolutionaries who believed in the supremacy of human reason and sought to replace the Catholic Church with a more secular belief system. The cult of reason was promoted by figures like Jacques Hébert and Pierre Gaspard Chaumette. This new belief system celebrated reason, logic, and Enlightenment principles. It was marked by festivals and ceremonies intended to promote rational thought and the rejection of traditional religious practices. One of the most notable events was the Festival of Reason, held at the Notre Dame Cathedral, which was repurposed as a Temple of Reason. Maximilien Robespierre, who led the Committee of Public Safety during the Reign of Terror, opposed the cult of reason's atheistic elements. Instead, he established the cult of the Supreme Being in 1794, which acknowledged the existence of a higher power without adhering to the traditional doctrines of Christianity. Robespierre believed that the recognition of a supreme being would encourage virtue among citizens and serve as a moral foundation for the Republic. The cult of the Supreme Being emphasized civic values and moral virtue and held elaborate festivals, such as the Festival of the Supreme Being, to promote these ideals. Both the cult of reason and the cult of the Supreme Being were part of a broader movement during the French Revolution to de-Christianize society and promote secularism. However, these cults faced resistance and were short-lived. After Robespierre's fall from power, the revolutionary government's religious policies were reversed, and the Catholic Church eventually regained some influence in France. The attempts to replace traditional religion with state-sponsored cults reflect the revolutionaries' radical efforts to reshape French society and align it with Enlightenment principles. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you want us to cover a specific topic, please write it in the comments. Give this video a like and share it so your family and friends can also learn about the gripping story of the French Revolution. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. And don't miss our recommended video at the end. You will enjoy it. Never forget, history is the imitator of time, the repository of actions, the witness of the past, the example and warning of the present. The caution for the future.